a prosecutor here. First, we enter 4 exhibits. Defense, no objection. That's standard. So we have the introduction of exhibits, I guess, before witness testimony. How does that work?
Sure. I mean, they'll enter the exhibits by stipulation sometimes, and they've obviously stipulated to the exhibit so they can just get right to it with the witness. It might be video, it might be maps, it might be any number of things, documents, but they're getting that in before the witness actually takes a stand. It's not unusual in federal cases at all.
So got a question here, a super chat question. Thank you so much from Nest Dog. Where's Christina Quorum? Will she be a witness? Now, this was, by all accounts, Combs' former chief of staff. She has come up in other litigation before. The allegation being she knew what was going on, was a part of it. I don't know if she's going to be a witness in this case. But what do I remember in opening statements today? I remember reading they use the term chief of staff or chief of staffs. Makes me wonder, she's probably going to be a witness, no?
I would think she would be, unless she's got some Fifth Amendment prohibition. She may have asserted the Fifth before a grand jury. She may have a lawyer saying, I'm not going to put her on the witness stand without immunity. If the government didn't grant her immunity, if she felt like she needed it, she might not be a witness. If she has no exposure, Fifth Amendment exposure in the case, and simply as a fact witness, there's nothing preventing them from calling her. You know, government, though, is only going to call witnesses that are going to help their case. It's only in unusual circumstances where they'll call a reluctant witness, and that's usually out of necessity, and they may not have that necessity here. So if she's not a reluctant witness and she doesn't have any Fifth Amendment implications, you'll probably see her.
You want to know who the first witness is of the Sean Combs criminal trial, Brian?
Go ahead.
We are going to call LAPD officer Israel Flores. Now, he comes in, says, I'm a reservist for the Army. I was a guard with Securitas in 2016 in the Intercontinental Hotel near Century City. What happened on March 5th, 2016? I was told of the 6th floor. So they are starting with arguably the most important piece of evidence in this case. Are they not? Are they starting now with the video of Sean Combs purportedly beating Cassandra Ventura?
There they are. They have come out and they decided we're going to come out with a home run. And the idea behind it is pretty simple. Let's now poison this jury with evidence that they'll never, ever, ever forget. Let's start this game, for lack of a better way to describe it, 10-0 in the first inning. And it's a smart play because it's going to be the first thing these jurors see. And they're going to see this again and again, by the way, before this trial's over. Well, what a first impression. And think about it in terms of life. First impressions are sometimes the most important ones.
Let me tell you why I think this is so brilliant. In the scheme of this whole timeline, when Cassandra Ventura came out with her allegations, a lot of people looked at it and said, how do we know it's true? You know, another person accusing high-profile celebrity. How do we know it's true? When that video came out, it not only corroborated a section of her complaint where she talked about this, some would feel it corroborated everything she said. So if the jury sees this first and then she testifies, what a great move by the prosecution. That, at least my opinion, Brian. But Eric, I got another question for you. This is from Roger Wade. Oh, Roger, thank you so much. Super chat question. Thank you so much for your contribution. How crucial is Combs' apology going to be regarding the validity of the hotel video? Well, can't deny it's him.
You know, listen, there's some things, you know, you can accept an apology for. This isn't going to be one of them. No one's going to really care that he apologized. I think what the defense has already started to do and what they will continue to do is eat this and simply say, listen, yeah, if this was a state court prosecution for domestic violence, he would have pled guilty. He's already said he's sorry. He did that. He's not a racketeer, and this isn't a racketeering conspiracy.
Yeah. It was interesting when they were talking about the videos, right? Should the CNN video come in? Should other versions of it come in? What's accurate, what's not? There was an argument brought forward by the prosecution saying, you want to talk about authenticity of the tape? Sean Combs admitted it was him in his Instagram apology. That's authenticity right there, which again begs the question, why on earth he decided from a legal point of view it was a good idea to make that video. I still don't know, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, hindsight's a great thing. I don't think he ever saw this coming. But There's no way to get around the video. The question is, what does the video mean in the context of these charges? And I'll say this. I love the move. I love the fact that they're starting with it. But unless they're going to also end with it, if this is a 2-month trial, a lot can happen in 2 months.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I want to confirm this for sure, but I think that one of the reasons they might also bring this witness in, right, is to establish that he bought the tape and he was trying to cover up his crime, and maybe it was a sense of one of those underlying predicate crimes they have to prove for racketeering conspiracy. So not only do they get they not only get the attack, they get the cover up, which is another essential element of racketeering.
You know, as I listened to what was being described in the opening speeches, I thought that was huge.
Yeah.
Because it's manipulation. He's not only manipulating people, he's manipulating evidence. He's the puppeteer. And I think you're absolutely right. I think they're going to go down that road really, really hard, that he threw money at cover-up, that he threw money at covering evidence, at covering witnesses. And that has a big impact on jurors. You know, the everyday person sees that, and, you know, you're not covering up innocent behavior. You're not covering up non-criminal behavior.
Yeah.
And it's significant evidence.
Well, Tenny Garagos, who's his defense attorney, in her opening statement said, on bribery, this is about the Intercontinental Hotel. He paid a security guard to make the footage go away. This was solely to prevent bad publicity for Combs and for Cassie. There was no law enforcement investigation. What do you think about that?
Well, you got to be careful with that, because I'm not so sure that's true. If it is true, then it's a great argument. But it begs the question, the reason that there's no law enforcement investigation, because the tape went away and you shut her up. So if I'm the prosecutor, I'm going to have a lot to say about that. That it was everything about getting rid of evidence so he would not go to jail on a state court domestic violence case. And it would also allow the government to say, you know, I heard the defense up here talking about how this is domestic violence. Well, there's a reason it didn't get prosecuted, because he got rid of all the evidence. And he shut her up. So, you know, it's going to go back and forth like this for 2 months.
It really is. It really is. And we just got an update from court. So Mr. Flores says, and again, first witness of the Sean Combs trial. This is somebody who had worked at the Intercontinental Hotel as a security guard. He's currently a LA police officer. So he was a security guard at the Intercontinental back in 2016. He says, there I recognize Sean Combs. He is there wearing a gray sweater. The prosecutor asks, what was your title? He replies, Assistant Director of Security. The prosecutor says, let me show you a photo of the Intercontinental Hotel. The Flores says it's shaped like a pyramid, and that exhibit has been admitted. So they're using him to lay a foundation for some of the evidence that's going to be put forward here. I have a question from Alicia Velgos. Is Jennifer Lopez being subpoenaed? Probably unlikely, right?
I can't imagine.
Because what would be the value of her testimony? What would she say?
I don't think that's going to happen. It'd be great for us, but I don't think that's going to happen. It certainly wouldn't be great for Ms. Lopez. So I wouldn't anticipate. I think we heard about that one loud and clear pre-trial if that was happening.
It seems that the prosecution wanted to be very specific with how they charged this. I mean, if you look at all of the allegations Sean Combs has been facing in the last 2 years, year and a half, if they wanted to potentially charge him with everything into one case, I think we would need years to get through it. They're very specific in what they charged him with, and also what they didn't charge him with, and who they're going to call and who they're not going to call, right?
Yeah, and you don't want to open up the door to weak evidence or to weak allegations. You know, you do it like they've done it with, you know, with a silencer as opposed to a shotgun, because when you do it broadly and you do it, you know, with a kind of a broad-based brush, the defense can have a ball with it, cutting it to pieces. I think the way they've charged it is smart. Whether they've overcharged it with racketeering, we're going to find out.
Got a question from Vanessa. How long do you think the trial will last? We believe it's going to be 8 weeks, which is a significantly long time. I mean, tough for a jury to sit on any case, let alone a high-profile case like this, let alone with the evidence they're going to be seeing. 8 weeks. That's no wonder you needed 6 alternates, right?
I'm going to say something, though. You know, we got a jury this morning. They opened, were into witnesses. I've had experiences, a lot of experiences in federal court as opposed to state court. Everybody has the mind and memory of the Simpson trial, which, lasted forever. It was a state court prosecution. Federal court cases don't go like that. And sometimes when they estimate 8 weeks for a federal case, suddenly 8 weeks turns into 6. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little less than the time period they're projecting.
Well, we'll see. They're going to be taking off for certain holidays as well and things like that. And obviously there could be some issues that delay trial. 8 weeks, long time. Question from Kaylee. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing it. My question is if Sean Combs is found guilty, what does that mean for all that have been implicated? Do they get charged? Now, that wouldn't be the first time, Brian, that we see a prosecution of one individual first that potentially leads to the arrest and indictment and prosecution of other people.
Yeah, you do see it. You see it in cases where people are convicted and then they roll on other people. I don't envision that here. They had plenty of time to make decisions about charging other people. Unless something happens during this trial in the way of additional evidence coming in or witnesses making declarations that weren't anticipated, I'd be stunned if we got more people prosecuted out of this unless there was some kind of effort made on the part of Diddy after the fact if he were to be convicted to cooperate, which I don't anticipate at all.
By the way, Brian, the reason we're having this in-depth conversation right now as the court is in session and we're providing live updates, there are no cameras in federal court. Why are there no cameras in federal court? Why is there no audio generally permitted in federal court? What's the rationale here when you have state courts across the country that do permit it?
Yeah, and I practice in a state court that doesn't. The federal courts just universally have a belief that cameras in the courtroom can have a disastrous effect on juries and courtroom proceedings, that jurors can be compromised, that jurors can be exposed to things that they shouldn't be exposed to, and they're very protective of the jury system. The flip side of it is these are public trials, and particularly in cases like this where the public cares about it and wants to know, I've always had the view that they ought to be able to see it because people can be distrustful. And sometimes things happen behind closed doors that, jurors may benefit from the fact that there isn't any cameras, but people, the citizens, don't. So I don't think we're ever going to see it change. I wish it would. And for those state courts that don't have it, like Pennsylvania, I wish they would put the cameras in there so everybody can see how the sausage is made.
And we could see more of Brian McMonagle, because who doesn't want that at the end of the day? We all want to see Brian McMonagle a little bit more.
Well, that would be the reason not to, perhaps, but
well,
my family would disagree with you.
So we have another update from court right now because it's currently in session. We just talked about no cameras. The prosecutor asked, what kind of incidents did you respond to? Again, this is the former security guard at the Intercontinental Hotel. Mr. Flores says all kinds. We had a couple of suicides there. We prepare incident reports, the 5 W's. The prosecutor says, would you attach photos to the reports? The response, yes, but not video. We did not have the password. Okay, so all laying up into the foundation of this alleged attack from Sean Combs against Cassandra Ventura. Here's something interesting. We have a poll up. Poll says, do you think the 2016 hotel video will be crucial to this case? 85% of the people who took this poll say yes. 15% say no. Now, crucial, ambiguous word about what that means. It's obviously going to have to be considered by the jury. I would say 100% has to be considered by the jury. But will it sway them to say Sean Combs is guilty or not? I don't know. What do you think, Brian?
Well, it makes him a bad guy. And, a lot of jury trials are tried with people who are celebrities who don't have that kind of baggage that, you don't have to think, well, wow, he did this, he did that. Maybe he's not the great guy we think he is. Well, this is a bad guy. I mean, this video paints him as a bad guy. And when you're in the defense camp like I am and you're defending a case, it stinks to start with, I got a bad guy sitting next to me, because if he's a bad guy, maybe he's capable of everything the prosecution says he is. Having said that, I think the defense is going to work really, really hard to call this what it is. It's bad conduct. It's a criminal charge in state court. We're in federal court. They've made a federal case out of a guy who's committed state court assault.
Yeah, yeah. Violence, not sex trafficking. Two separate things.
Yep.
That's what they're going to be argument is. Got a question, a super chat question from G Disney. Thank you so much for your contribution, G Disney. Really appreciate it. Appreciate it. What reforms, industry-wide or legislative, should be proposed to prevent replication of similar abuse by other powerful figures? It's an interesting question. What do you think, Ryan?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any legislation, but, guilty verdicts will have that effect. And, if at the end of this trial, there's a guilty verdict, and we discussed another pending case that's going on now with some rather wealthy folks, it tends to send messages. It tends to clean up bad behavior. A guilty verdict in this case, I think, would go a long way toward that. Whether there's ever going to be legislation on this, I mean, what legislation could you impose? You either make conduct criminal or you don't. Could you add different crimes to the crime code? I suppose you could, but the government would tell you we've already got the crimes on the books, and that's why we prosecute them for it.
One of the questions I keep getting asked constantly about this case, I don't think anybody's asked it yet today, is will Sean Combs take the stand? He did it in his last trial so many years ago, the nightclub shooting, very different circumstances. You think he'll take the stand this time around?
I don't. And that's just a gut reaction. I think he's got too much to answer for. And I think what we're seeing with the defense in this case is just a kind of a clinical attack on the elements of the charges. I think if he got up there and testified, he'd be subjected to some significant cross-examination. And, once a client testifies, you lose control of the case. You lose control of him. And while I'm sure he's a very eloquent guy and a smart guy, if I'm cross-examining him, I'd spend the first, hour replaying the video while he's on the witness stand without even asking him a question. Not so sure they want to put him through all that.
We have an earlier question, sorry I didn't get to it till now, from Render Token HODL. Was there any additional evidence brought to light? So maybe you mean during opening statements. Look, there was the mention of Mia. They mentioned Cassie Ventura, maybe knew, maybe not. It does become a question, I think, Brian, how much is going to be shown to this jury? What do I mean by that? Leading up to this case, everything was redacted. Everything was blocked out. Is it not going to be anymore? Are we going to know everything by the end of 8 weeks?
Oh, yeah. You're going to have to unredact it, identities, et cetera. Personal information, no, but, Social Security, that kind of factual, statistical information. But names, identities, you can't have a fair trial. You can't cross-examine witnesses without that material being redacted. So with the exception of, maybe some identifying information, out bank accounts and things like that, all bets are off. It's coming in, it's getting unredacted.
We got a few more minutes here. I want to tell everybody what's been happening in court. Again, this former security guard at the Intercontinental Hotel is being questioned right now. First witness of this trial, of Sean Combs' criminal trial. Prosecutor asks, when did this incident take place? Mr. Flores says, 11 a.m. I got a report of a woman in distress on the 6th floor. I closed the security base and checked the cameras. There was an African-American man pacing back and forth. I didn't see a female. I rushed there. So again, going into this, remember why this is important, Brian, right? The prosecution saying this isn't just an episode of him beating her up. It's an episode where she was escaping a certain kind of situation. It's a characteristic, a symptom of a larger forced sexual pattern. And I understand why they're starting with it, but the defense has been saying this is just an unfortunate domestic act, but this is a very, very particular situation. I have to tell the defense, for the prosecution's point of view, having him running there in a towel, the optics of that, it definitely helps their case, no?
It's staggering evidence, and it fits the narrative that they're trying to project for all the other charges. Coercion, physical coercion, it's mental coercion, it's all kinds of bad behavior, and it doesn't get worse than this. We've all seen videos with domestic violence in it. This is pretty bad. She's trying to get away. She's gotten away. She's at the elevator banks. And this guy has the insanity, the audacity to chase her down a hallway wearing a towel, beat her up, drag her back. It doesn't get a whole hell of a lot worse than this, obviously short of a homicide.
Got a question from KC. Do you think Sean will try to throw other celebrities into the fire as well? I don't know. I don't think so, no?
I don't know where that gets them. Sinking ships. They try and sometimes drag other ships down. I don't see that here. He's got a brilliant defense team. They're going to make this an attack on the charges. I don't think that they're going to be pointing fingers at anybody else. He'll take what blame he has to take on what they have to take blame on, and they'll argue that there just has been an absence of evidence on what's important in order to prove racketeering. And I think a lot of this is going to be directed toward consent. They're going to call people prostitutes. They're going to call people escorts. They're going to say they were paid for their services. They're going to say they came there with eyes wide open, and that this isn't what the government has alleged.
Well, doesn't the defense have to be careful that how they cross-examine alleged victims, saying you're out it for the money, or you were heartbroken, or you kept coming back, or if you really did have an issue, how come you didn't go to authorities? We live in a different day and age, and beating up, that's not fair. Cross-examining these alleged victims can look like beating them up. And you have to be careful about that, right? I remember there was at least one juror, prospective juror this past week, who admitted they were excused from the jury. If I see a witness being questioned, an alleged victim being questioned about why they didn't report it at first, I'm going to understand it. I might side with them, right? And that shows a bias. But it does become a question of the technique and the manner in which they cross-examine these alleged victims. And I don't think it's a mistake that Tenny Garagos did the opening statement today as opposed to Mark Agnifilo.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. They have to be able to walk that fine line, particularly today, now that the pendulum has swung with obviously these movements. And having said that, you can't get up and attack somebody's credibility without attacking their credibility. You can't cross-examine people and try to suggest they're not telling the truth without attacking them on their veracity. And so you want to call it victim shaming, call it whatever you want. I don't care if it's a sexual assault case or an eyewitness to a murder. Either you're going to cross-examine them or you're not. And if you're not going to cross-examine them, you should have pled guilty, 4 or 5 days ago. So I think the gloves are coming off. I really do. And I think by putting, some of the lawyers they've put on this team who can have it both ways, they can say, hey, listen, I'm a woman. I'm the last person in the world to agree with domestic violence. I don't like what he did here.
Right.
But they charged him with a crime he didn't commit.
So we'll give everybody a final update from court because we're going to have to be signing off in a minute. But what did you see on the 6th floor? Mr. Flores says, Mr. Combs in a towel and some like colored socks. He's a rapper, producer, and Cassie on the floor. Prosecutor says, let me show you some photos. And Combs was apparently in a tuxedo, and in a separate photo, Cassie Ventura is smiling. Listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do these live shows every day. That's our plan. We're going to be doing these live lunch shows every day. We're going to be doing daily sidebar recaps every night about what happened in court from that day. Particularly with no cameras or audio, we're going to do our best to recap all the important moments and also provide you legal analysis of what's happening, like with our great guest, Brian McMonigal, who was fantastic today, as he is always. Brian, thank you so much for coming on. It was great seeing you, and I know the audience and I really appreciate your insight into all this.
Jesse, thank you for having me. It's great to see you.
Great seeing you. Everybody, take care. We're going to be wrapping up. I'm Jesse Weber. Stick with us here at Law and Crime.